Hi everybody! Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit for January. As soon as I looked through the papers in the kit, I knew I was going to be working with this one first. I just love the florals and I love the way the florals make up a heart. And I wanted to see what it would look like combined with a mixed media background. So I roughly cut out the heart, but I was careful not to cut from the side. I put my scissors through the middle because I wanted to leave the rest of the paper intact because I want to use that for the background, and you'll see that in a little bit. There was a whole sheet of butterflies. And when there's a whole sheet of something that I want to fussy cut out, I look on the other side first to see if there's anything that I want to fussy cut out on the other side so that I don't end up accidentally cutting through it, which is something that I have definitely done in the past. I ended up cutting out some butterflies of different sizes from both sides of that piece of paper, and now I'm getting started on my mixed media background. I start off with a piece of cardstock. This is a 120-pound white smooth cardstock, and I have already coated it with some white gesso. I'm using some sprays on the background, and I'm trying to mix the color that matches that mustardy yellow color that you could see off to the left-hand side of the screen. I'm using the packaging technique, so I start by spraying some yellow spray onto the plastic, and the yellow spray is a Color Bloom 2 spray by Prima in Spring Dandelion. I also add a little touch of a color called Fir Needles, which is also a Color Bloom 2 spray, and then I add a dot of Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist spray called Old World Brown. And that combination gets pretty close to the color that I was looking for. And I'm putting the color around the pencil heart that I drew earlier. I was careful when I drew the pencil heart that I drew it a little bit smaller than the heart that I've cut out that I'm going to use in the center of the layout, because I don't want the pencil line to show. It's kind of hard to get rid of once you've put the sprays on top of it, and I don't want that to be visible. I'm happy with the amount of color that's on the background, and I tried the pattern paper heart back on top to make sure that enough color was showing. And now I'm adding some splatters, and I'm mainly aiming to add the splatters around the outside of the large area of color. And I like the way that those small splatters help to provide an area of transition between the background and the color that's on the layout. Because they're very small, I add quite a few of them. Now I'm adding a Prima Color Bloom 2 spray in Magic Stone. This is the color that was included in the kit this month, and this green color goes perfectly with the colors that are in the pattern paper, so I wanted to have a few dots of this darker color to help to tie together the background and the pattern paper. Now I'm adding some white splatters. This is watered down white acrylic paint, and I think that this just adds to the variation in the background and the texture, and I love this effect on mixed media backgrounds, so I almost always add it. At this point, I was considering whether I should add some modeling paste to the background, but I decided not to because the pattern paper is very detailed and I didn't want to overdo it. So now I'm inking the edge of my pattern paper. I wanted to use a dark color so there would be a lot of contrast between the heart and the background. So I'm using some Distress Oxide in Forest Moss, and I go all the way around the outside of that pattern paper heart. I want to give the page some dimension, so I thought that a good way to do that would be to pop up this large heart on some fun foam. I put some foam on the back of the heart, and right now I'm just roughly cutting out the foam, and then I go back in and I put a few more pieces in different spots to support not only the large area of the heart, but some of the larger leaves as well. Next, I inked the edges of the heart with some Distress Oxide in Mowed Lawn. And even though I've already inked it with some Forest Moss, I wanted to add a little bit of brightness to the layout, and Mowed Lawn is a little bit of a brighter green color. The mowed lawn doesn't make a huge difference on the layout, but I think it's a little touch that adds something to it. I was thinking that the background was the right color, but it was just a little bit too much color, and I wanted to dull it down just a little bit. So I took out my heavy gesso and this little sponge that I have had in my stash for more years than I would like to admit. And I am dabbing on some of the heavy gesso just in the areas that are going to show, and it dulls it down just the right amount. I'm going to use this piece of yellow paper from my stash to mount everything to. This is just a piece of paper that I have in a stack of thick papers that I'm not going to use for any other purpose. So I cut the mixed media background down to 11 inches by 11 inches. And the striped gutted piece of paper there, that is the flip side of the heart paper that I fussy cut out for the center. And I'm using some Distress Oxide and I'm inking the edges of the background. And then I put a whole bunch of ATG adhesive on the back of the mixed media paper, and that helps to keep the mixed media paper flat. I often run my mixed media papers through my laminator to help flatten them out a little bit, and this helps as well. I wanted to darken the edges of that heart even more, so now I'm using some Distress ink in Vintage Photo, and I'm putting a little bit of color around the edges of the heart. So there's plenty of color on the edge of that heart. I'm putting some adhesive on the back of the foam. I attach the heart down to the layout, and then I decided that I wanted to add some of the Vintage Photo around the edge of the mixed media background paper. So I'm peeling up that paper just along the edge, and I'm trying to be very careful to get the ink only on the edge of the paper. And I did get a little smudge of the Vintage Photo on the striped paper in the background, so I just took the dauber and I smudged a few more places on the striped paper. That paper has a lot of variation on it anyway, so I thought that it would just look like it was part of the background. I hope that that worked out. Now I'm inking the edges of all of these fussy cut pieces that I'm going to be including on the layout. I have flowers, I have butterflies, and I also have my title, which is Beautiful Memories, and that was fussy cut from one of the pattern papers. In addition to inking all of the embellishments on the page, I also ink the edge of the photo. I'm not going to have a lot of matting on this photo, so I wanted to make sure that it contrasted with the background. I'm going to put it on the left-hand lower side of the heart, and so I put a little bit of foam on the lower left-hand corner so that it would sit correctly on the layout. Next, I use an EK Success Scalloped Photo Corner Punch, one of my favorite punches, and I punch out some photo corners in black and in mustard, and I layer them on top of each other. I don't end up leaving the black photo corners that are underneath the mustard ones. I just didn't like the way it looked on this layout, but I'll go back later and fix that. And now I'm working on the cluster on the bottom right-hand side. That's going to have the title. So I'm just trimming down this flower, this large flower, and I'm going to be layering the title on top of it. I like the idea of giving some dimension to the title, so I'm popping it up using some more of that fun foam. And then I attach that down on top of the flower, and I use a couple more fussy cut flowers from the pattern papers to embellish that area. This was a photo that I took at the Botanical Gardens. I've been scrapbooking the photos that I took there quite a bit lately. I think that they go really well with this particular collection because there's so much greenery and so many flowers. There were so many places to take beautiful pictures at the Botanical Gardens, and I usually like to include my family in the pictures that I take when I'm with them, but I just couldn't keep asking them every 2 seconds to take a picture, even though they're very kind to me and very good-natured about it. I ended up taking quite a few photos that they weren't in just so that I could remember all of the beautiful things that we saw. And here I'm showing you how I put adhesive down the center of the butterfly and some foam on the wings. And then I press down on the center, and that will help the butterflies to have their wings pop up. I remove those black photo corners from the photo, and then I start attaching down all of those butterflies that you see off to the left. For all of them, I put the adhesive down the middle, and I put foam on their wings. And now I'm adding adhesive to the foam, and I do manage to put all of those butterflies on the heart and the background right around the heart. I put a large butterfly on the top center of the layout, and that has a sentiment on it that says "Celebrate Today." And then I skipped some of the footage because it took a very long time and it was rather repetitive, but all of the butterflies are now attached down to the heart. I add some self-adhesive pearls to the photo corners. And now I'm using some Bo Bunny glitter paste. This is a clear paste. The name of it is Sugar. And it adds a lot of sparkle and it adds a lot of shine to whatever you put it on. So I thought I would draw a little extra attention to the butterflies by applying this to all of the butterflies. And I love this paste. It goes on pretty thin and it dries very quickly. So if you want to add 2 coats and add even more sparkle and shine, it doesn't take long for it to dry before you can add another coat. And I found that some of the glitter paste was kind of dry on the top, so I had to dip my paintbrush way into the bottom, and then I got glitter paste all over my paintbrush, but it washes off very easily. And I love the way you could see my orange soda off to the left. I love sun-kissed orange soda, and I like to have at least a little bit on hand whenever I'm scrapbooking. So I'm adding some very tiny pearls. I would guess that they're about 3mm pearls to the centers of the butterflies. They come in strips, so they're very easy to apply. And I'm adding a little bit of glue so that later on the strips don't come off. They do hold pretty well, but I've started to add glue whenever I use stickers, pretty much anything that's a sticker, just to make sure that everything holds up for years to come. I'm creating a very, very tiny cluster in the upper left-hand corner. I just wanted to have a little something there. I use a fussy cut flower and a butterfly, but then I was thinking that I wanted a smaller butterfly, so I switched 2 of the butterflies, and then I add pearls to the new butterfly so that it would match in with all the other butterflies. The heart is very detailed, and I like the contrast between the white border of the photo and the large heart, but I did want to put something off to the left because we have the white border of the photo on the white background. So I thought I could layer together a few strips of paper and create a little bit of interest there. I picked out 2 pattern papers that I thought would look nice layered on top of each other, and I cut 2 large L-shaped pieces, and I'm distressing the edges now with my scissors. And I'm also going to ink the edges just like all the other items on the layout. And I'm putting the newsprint looking paper right underneath the photo, and then the mustard color on the bottom layer or the outside layer, and then that will provide some contrast with the white background. I add some adhesive to the back of them, and then I work on positioning them just right behind the photo. And then once I have them positioned where I want them, I go in and I bend the edges of the paper to make them look more distressed. And there was a spot here and there where I couldn't bend them with my fingers because the papers were adhered together too well, so I used my scissors and roughed them up a bit. Off to the left, you could see that I have used some dies and I cut out these really, really thin little wisps of branches. I cut them out in white, and I thought that that would add a little brightness into the layout. And I'm trimming them and tucking them around the layout, mainly behind the butterflies, but also around the outside edge of the heart. I really love adding florals to the page. I think that they add a lot of detail. I think that this particular branch is a nice finishing touch for this layout. And I'm so sorry, I don't know who the manufacturer was of these branch dies. I know it was a small company, but unfortunately years ago I didn't think I would ever need to know the names of the manufacturers of dies, and I got rid of all the packaging. I don't do that anymore though. I also wanted to add some of the branches to the clusters, the title cluster, and then that very small cluster on the upper left-hand corner. So I just added a few small die cuts to each of those areas. I always think that it's a good idea to carry those kinds of embellishments through the whole layout, even if you're just using a touch of them in some places. Now I'm using gel glue and I'm attaching down each of those die cuts at the base. And then a couple of days later, I was thinking that I really needed to add some pearls to the layout. Not a whole lot, just a few. I had a really big pearl that I just put down on the layout. I only had one of those, so I put that in the center. And then I added a sprinkling of pearls, mainly larger ones, but I also used some pearls that were on the smaller side. And I just scattered those fairly evenly throughout the layout. I don't necessarily think that the layout needed more detail, but I think it needed a different texture. Almost everything on the layout is paper, and I think that it really adds to a layout when there are things that are made of different materials on them. So even though I had a couple of pearls, it just wasn't enough. So I'm adding the pearls to the heart, and then of course I also add some of the pearls to the area that has the title, and I am going to add a couple of pearls in that small cluster on the top as well. There we go. And again, that just helps tie everything together. Once again, I do use a little bit of glue behind some of the pearls. Sometimes I will place some glue right next to the edge of the pearl if I already have it attached down, and I think that that will help to hold it down too. I sure hope so. The pearls were the final touch to the layout, and here are some close-ups. I wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who watches my videos. Thank you if you have subscribed to my channel, if you've left likes. I really appreciate all of those comments. They really make my day. I wanted to just say thank you to everybody. I love having this YouTube channel and connecting with so many wonderful people. Don't forget to take a look in the description box. You'll find the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You could check out all of their beautiful kits there. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.